I'm Daisy Parris, I'm a British painter, and this is my studio in Somerset. As soon as I stepped foot in Somerset, everything just felt easy, or like it wasn't like I was going uphill every day, you know, it just, things fell into place. I felt like the landscape held me a bit, you know? It does that, it's really like generous and nurturing here.
And it gives you, I suppose, the space to think about things. You know, yeah, the painting can't not be influenced by your surroundings and the light and the, you know, the colours and the changing seasons, but also being here, I think, gives you space to think and to be and to think about, you know, big issues that you tackle in your work.
Yeah, it's like gives me space to process like loss and grief and not be scared to do that.
I noticed the first painting you made here was so different instantly. I mean, it still had all the marks of you. You knew it was a Daisy Parris painting, but the light within it and the scale of it, the kind of the confidence as well.
Yeah, this like 6.5 metre painting just like fell out of me.
And it was a real turning point, I think, for you, you know, as a person, as a painter. It was all in that painting.
Yeah.
And from there, it's just gone on and gone on and gone on.
Yeah, and I think like one of the differences that I've noticed looking back at some of the old work is that was all about like the first marks and the first gestures and being precious about that and being immediate and manic and stuff. And now I just take my time. Like some of the paintings are taking like 2 years because I'm just building up so many layers and I'm taking off as much as I am putting on now, which is a new thing.
Yeah.
But it's like when you're looking at the mud here and how the pigs have like carved into that, it's like I can't not think about what's underneath all the paint, what I'm putting underneath the paint and how many layers it needs to have some substance.
Yeah.
And that it's okay to dig in and take it all off.
Yeah.
You know, because that shows signs of age and weathering.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm confronted with the weather here, there's no escaping it. So that's a big thing in the work now. Oh, Tilly's coming. Tilly. Oh, she's so pretty. Hello, baby. I mean, you can kind of see this area here is where text was. And that had been stuck on like months ago. And I peeled that off. Same with up here, that had text on there.
Okay, yeah, where the orange bits are. Whether it's, you know, gestural mark making or the new kind of tendrils of canvas or how you write. I think you write how you paint. And it's all the same.
Yeah, and I'm trying
language.
to stick these on how I would paint a gesture.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all the same. It's all like heavy-handed, but considered in a way, but then just kind of like letting the materials do what they need or like interfering with them and weathering them. And you know, I was talking about like wasted paint earlier.
Yeah.
Then when you dig back in, none of it's wasted because there's like, you can see there's so many layers here. There's like this mint green and then this deep yellow, and then there's brown, and then there's lilac, and then there's this dark. So then carving back in gives all of the underneath purpose. And you never know what bits are going to be revealed.
So the evolution of text has seemingly happened really quickly. but in fact, it's been there forever, hasn't it?
Yeah, since I was a kid, actually. I've kind of always been obsessively writing in my journals, angsty little journals. And I did used to paint text, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, but I always kept it a secret. I think that's the thing, is the text was always hidden.
I remember when we first started working together, there was also like almost little symbols that appeared in the corner of paintings.
Yeah.
And that alluded to text. But you obviously couldn't decipher it as
Yeah, it
someone
was like
who was looking at it.
coded text or something.
It was like coding. And it reminds me now a bit of how you attach text and canvas to your work and then take it away.
Yeah.
And weirdly, it's leaving a similar kind of mark to those original symbols.
Yeah, it's actually leaving the kind of gestures I was trying to make, but obviously they were constructed by hand.
Yeah.
But I was after this like organic gesture. I still repeat phrases a lot. Or like a phrase would become the identity of the show. Like Back to the Sky.
Yeah.
And then a whole poem or series of words came from that.
And that's always been the way, hasn't it? Because even when the text first really started to become a mainstay in the work, there were maybe 2 or 3 phrases that would keep coming out. Like sorry, sorry, sorry was one that kept. I see you in everyone I love, which was also a show. But that would come again and again in work. And it's moved from, you know, originally symbols, essentially coded symbols, then to a few layers of text. And now this kind of outpouring of, it just feels like a torrent.
Yeah. And I mean, well, when I show you in a minute all the writing I have done, I mean, that's not even half of it or whatever. There's a push and pull of like trying to be honest and emotionally generous and not hiding everything, but then not giving it all away. Because it doesn't just end when I finish the painting. It's like, then you have to communicate about it, and that's the hard part. But I can't let that stop me, because otherwise I would just censor everything, and there's no point. I don't see any point in that or any value in censoring anything. So I don't know. I mean, it still goes through editing processes, but some of that is like, the more I repeat it or write it out, the more sure of it I am. So it's editing in that way, and like not necessarily taking away or deleting sentences or whatever. It's more like the same thing, like carving the same gesture over and over.
Yeah.
So I write it on my phone, then I write it on paper, then I write it on canvas, then I cut it out, and then do you know what I mean? It's like the more time I spend with it, the more I believe in it. I like using text to be playful and light-hearted about really heavy things. So that's where like the rhyming couplets and limericks come in, and the childlike rhymes to deal with really heavy subjects. But I don't know where it comes from. It just like comes out of me, which is funny. I'm just like a really quiet person, but this like brutal text comes out of me.
Yeah. And I feel like with your work, you know, you spoke about talking about it afterwards. I feel like even if you don't talk about it, they're so emotionally charged that you almost don't need to. And I feel like even with the text, you know, as beautiful and as brutal as it can be, sometimes even if you don't read it, the way it's scratched into a painting or the way it gets demolished, you know, and you feel what you're saying regardless, you know, whether it's
Yeah.
a painted gesture or whether it's text or now stitching that's also coming in. Someone said to me recently, it's like the stitching feels like suturing. It's like a stitching back together of a person, which I thought was really incredible when thinking about your work. This kind of, it's tender, but it's brutal. You know, it's fixing, but it's dealing with something that is potentially destructive. And yeah, for me, the stitching is just like another part of the Daisy Parris mark making, be it painting, writing, sticking on, stitching. It's it feels very you. How you do it feels very you.
And then just going back to the text a bit, I thought of another contradiction of like asking people to read a painting, which is a lot to ask someone to sit and pause and literally read a painting. And then at the same time, I don't mind if you don't read the text. It doesn't matter. It's like, so there's that contradiction going on as well.
So you've got your first institutional show next year, and this is the start of a painting for it. It's quite the painting and scale. Do you plan the paintings to be this size or big to start off with, or is it a process that kind of develops as you're making? Do they tend to grow
I feel like
as you're making them?
actually the last 4 or 5 shows have centered around, I don't know, 6 or 8 meter pieces. And it's like, so this was 2 panels, but the other day I realized it needed to grow. So that's why I like working in panels, is because I can add and add to it. And as soon as I gave it more of the space it needed, then it started working. You know, it felt less suffocated, less uncertain. Now, I mean, this is just the bones of it. It's going to change a lot, but it's more confident and sure of itself. And now the image I have of the whole show makes sense because I figured out the hardest part, basically. And it's the part I enjoy most, like painting big, although it is a puzzle, but it seems to be like the key piece to all the shows lately, and kind of everything else with the other paintings work around the big piece. I think this painting makes sense with the weather. At the moment it's quite stormy, but like luminous and broody. It was all red at one point, and then it was all this like really dark green. And now I'm kind of bringing the lightness back to it and figuring out how to make dark work using brighter colors.
Yeah. The dark green is an interesting one because it presents sometimes as black.
Yes.
And you have to look, I mean, it's softer than black, but you have to really look to decipher what it is.
Yeah, that's why I like it, because it's an illusion. So it's so dark that it looks black, but as soon as you smudge it a little bit, you can see the green come out. And I think that's maybe where some of the tenderness lies. Like, it's interesting to have such a harsh color that can be softened.
Yeah.
You know, that's almost like hiding its own identity. Yeah, I find that really fascinating with color.
I've always known you as a painter. I think everybody associates you with painting specifically and, you know, large scale works. But they're quite physical because of the sheer scale of them. And I know, you know, when you were studying, there was some sculpture that came into your work. And do you think it might be something you return to? I know you have a residency coming up.
next year.
Yeah.
Which hopefully will give you some time to, you know, pursue whatever you want to pursue.
And like the paintings are becoming more sculptural anyway, so it's like it makes sense, or it's like it would be a natural progression to see how I handle sculpture now, which is quite exciting, and the way I handle space and material. And my sculptures were always about the landscape anyway.
Yeah.
So
It's
you know,
full circle.
I'd use collect rocks and stuff, so that's always made sense. And maybe that would be my way back into sculpture through the landscape.